Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, tonight, local authorities speak out about the death of George Floyd as we head into another protest in Billings this weekend.
Mr. Floyd's death is truly a tragedy, but violence and destruction are never the answer and detract from his memory and the message at hand.
That's a key takeaway from Billings Police Chief Rich St. John as he, the sheriff, and the mayor set the tone going into Sunday's planned protest in downtown Billings. Now, the chief says men and women in policing are angry, disgusted, and embarrassed and condemn the acts of the Minneapolis officers. They also fully support all rallies as long as they remain peaceful. Q2's Casey Conlin is now standing by in the newsroom with more from today's press conference. Casey.
Jeanelle, we heard Chief St. John open his remarks condemning the actions of the 4 Minneapolis officers who were involved in the death of George Floyd. He then took a strong stance in favor of Sunday's gathering, set for 1 p.m. on the lawn in front of the county courthouse, saying the Billings Police Department will be there to help leaders get their message across while ensuring everyone's safety.
Simply stated, law enforcement in Billings and Yellowstone County are fully supportive of peaceful protest. To anyone coming, know that we are doing everything we can to make sure that everyone's voices are heard, nobody's rights are infringed upon, and that whoever is protesting, whether they agree with one another or not, stays safe.
If you have any ill intentions or if you're coming just to rile things up, we ask that you please don't come. We don't want to take away from our forum, and we don't want to get off track on what we're really here to do, and that's to bring awareness and education to everybody in our community.
Now, these are scenes from last Saturday's impromptu protest downtown. Palmer opened her remarks today saying the group's main goal is to help the public understand racism exists in Billings and in Montana, not just in the black community, an opinion echoed by others in attendance.
This, we like to call it a rally, protest, is for all people of color. This is to bring awareness to racism against not only black people, but also Indigenous Americans as well.
As a white male in a predominantly white city, in a predominantly white state, I almost never ask myself whether others will treat me differently and worse because of my race. But for many black Americans and other Americans of color, including Native Americans in Billings, that may be a daily occurrence.
As of now, over 850 people are committed to the event on the group's Facebook page, with another 1,800 interested. Chief St. John said the police have contingencies in place if the crowd needs additional space to expand into. Janelle?
Now, Casey, we've seen several messages on Facebook and other social media mentioning groups coming into Billings to incite violence. Is there any truth to that?
St. John addressed that today, saying the BPD has seen the same thing on social media channels, but as of now, there is no, quote, credible, verifiable evidence that any of that is going to take place. He expects the crowd to behave, but says they'll be ready for anything.
All right, Q2's Casey Conlin, thank you. Well, protest organizers also said they want this weekend's rally to be a peaceful way to enact change in local and national communities. The organizers say they are, however, happy to have the safety and security of local authorities.
I feel a million times better after meeting with them to know that, you know, they have the intel that we don't have as far as things that are being said on Facebook that we don't see, activity that's happening at other rallies. And so, you know, they've really gone above and beyond to make sure that we can speak our minds and have whatever we need kind of at our disposal.
And stay tuned tomorrow for a preview of what organizers hope to achieve this weekend. Well, today, state health officials report a big jump in confirmed COVID-19 cases across Montana, a total of 16 positives, the largest single-day increase in about a month. We told you about 5 of them in Bighorn County late yesterday. The state now adding 8 positive cases in Gallatin County and 1 in Yellowstone. And late this afternoon, Lewis and Clark County health officials confirmed 2 more. Well, today, Governor Steve Bullock announcing further testing across Montana. He also revealed more opportunities to help small businesses, local governments, and Montana meat processors. Bullock announced an additional $25 million to the Small Business Stabilization Program. Additional funding will also go to local governments to cover COVID-related expenses. The governor also introduced a grant aimed at helping small and medium-sized meat processors adapt to local supply demands. Well, Montana will begin free statewide COVID-19 testing this weekend. That is, if you are asymptomatic. Now, Lewis and Clark County health workers jumping right in and will conduct the non-invasive test on the next 2 Saturdays. Now, this kind of screening test is for people who do not have symptoms and do not have any known exposure to COVID. Unlike the deep nasal swab test, this testing only requires a swab of the lower nostril. Now, the hope is to give public health a better idea of the prevalence of COVID-19 in local communities and across our state.
Point is to really see if there is a lot of COVID in the community among asymptomatic people. So this kind of screening test is for people who do not have symptoms and do not have any known exposure to COVID.
Now, results are expected to be turned around in about 5 days. I spoke with Riverstone Health today here in Billings, and so far it does not have any free testing planned yet. Well, the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services is now easing its grip on Montana restaurants and bars. It has now published additional guidance that allows restaurants, bars, and breweries to stay open an hour later and let customers sit on stools at the bar. The initial guidance mandated that they close at 11:30 p.m. The new rules, which maintain social distancing and strong sanitation measures, go into effect tomorrow. Well, we bring you a follow-up tonight. MTN Chief Investigative Reporter Andrea Lutz has been tracking the issue of a leaking canal in Billings and who's at fault for damage. Now, 7 families have joined in that legal battle, accusing the Billings Benchwater Association of not maintaining the ditch and forcing them into financial ruin.
7 families stand united on Viewcrest Drive, hoping perhaps legal action will help resolve an issue that's plagued them for the last 2 years.
It's a nightmare. It really has been a nightmare.
Sherry and Charlie Groskop were forced out of their home last July after a leak from the Billings Canal above caused the foundation of their home to massively shift.
It's moving. It's fracturing. And
Next door, Don Kaiser's home is perhaps the most badly damaged. Just take a look. He says it's also from an influx of moisture from above. And on that same street, story after story of the same trouble.
I'm not going to rent to somebody if I wouldn't live in it. You know.
Doug and Ruth Egan, who are on a fixed income, are losing $14,000 a year in rent profits. They, just like others, say their home is now worth nothing.
If they try to fix it, who's going to buy it from us?
Oh yeah, I mean, nobody would ever buy on this street again.
These homeowners are all suing the Billings Benchwater Association for what they say is failing to maintain the ditch. And according to their complaint, here's why. In the early 2000s, most of these homes were built, but then in 2018, homeowners started to notice their properties move due to water seepage. In the spring of 2019, when the canal filled up, the damage got worse. That summer, the Billings Benchwater Association attempted to repair the canal. But in the fall, a tension crack formed, as reported by MTN Investigates. In the winter of 2020, the ditch did more repairs. And even as the water filled up in the spring, another leak.
Gary Davis with the Billings Benchwater Association says when they realized the canal was leaking again in the spring of 2020, they shut off the water and did more repairs to the ditch. He says they eventually stopped the leak.
But attorney for the plaintiffs, John Heenan, says the potentially catastrophic instability of the area has always been the fear.
That canal has destroyed these homes, has destroyed private property. I mean, we all just pray that there's no further catastrophe. I mean, it wouldn't take much now to cause a blowout.
Davis, who declined an on-camera interview with MTN Investigates, said the issue is a matter of gravity and that the ditch's stance on the lawsuit is simple. The Viewcrest houses destabilized the hill on their own and caused their own problem. Rob and Cynthia Weens are still living in their home, but have constantly repaired cracking and even their fence that at one point pushed forward. Still, all homeowners say their properties are now worth nothing to try and sell.
It's not as easy as everybody thinks. You can just stop paying it and they just come and take it and be done with it.
We're pretty much buckled down for the long haul. I mean, we kind of have to be. I mean, if somebody destroys or something, whether they meant to or not, it's accountability, and it needs to be done, and people need to be held responsible for their actions or non-actions in this case.
For MTN Investigates, I'm Andrea Lutz.
Thanks, Andrea. And Andrea says the lawsuit has a jury date set for April 2021, and she says she did reach out to the legal team for the Billings Benchwater Association, but has not heard back. In other news tonight, a 21-year-old Plains man was killed in a rollover crash southwest of Roundup last night. It happened just before 8 p.m. Montana Highway Patrol says the man, whose name has not been released, was driving a Chevy pickup truck east on U.S. Highway 12. The vehicle left the road on the right-hand side. The driver overcorrected, lost control, and the truck overturned. The driver was not wearing a seatbelt and was pronounced dead at the scene. A 28-year-old passenger from Minnesota was also not wearing a seatbelt, was injured and taken to Billings Clinic. Authorities say alcohol, drugs, and speed are not suspected in this crash. Well, some changes to your annual fireworks show in the Billings Heights. It's moving to Metro Park. Harvest Church normally holds its 4th of July celebration and fireworks show at Castle Rock Park. Better Billings Foundation Executive Director Chuck Barthuli says COVID-19 is the main reason for the move. The details are still being worked out, but the display may be happening in the upper parking lot at the Metro. And what is touted as the biggest fireworks show in the state will go off in Laurel this year. Assistant Chief Kent Kulisa says the Laurel firefighters will again shoot fireworks. He says his department is working on Phase 2 guidelines with the Yellowstone County Health Office. He will make an announcement later with the details. The chamber stated on its Facebook page that it plans on a decision tomorrow about the parade and other Independence Day festivities. But first, on tonight's 5:30 News, legislative wars. We take a look back at some of the key results from Primary Tuesday. And in sports, as college athletes head back to campus, are some worried about coaches abusing voluntary workouts? Scott answers that question in just a bit.
And coming up in weather, we had some severe storms in the southeast corner of the state tonight. But back here in Billings, we're anticipating a big warm-up coming up this weekend and a big cool down. We'll chat about it coming up in a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.